Alright guys, so after you do sides 1 and 2, obviously the next step is sides 3 and 4. So I'm going to be cutting side 3 first. So what I've already done is I've deburred all the edges down here because now it's going to be sitting, side 4 is going to be sitting on the parallels. Before you go and switch this over though, don't just grab it out of the vise, deburr it, and then throw it back in. Anytime you change the setup, you have to re-clean everything because these chips will get stuck underneath. And that right there, if it's sitting up on a chip, that's at least 100 thousandths out. And if I were to cut it just like that, you would actually end up with 100 thousandths angle from side to side. So everything's got to be very clean, so I always wipe it back down, make sure there's no chips in there. I take my parallel, make sure there's no chips on there. I have one kind of hanging on, make sure that gets off. Put the parallel in there. I usually slide it back and forth a little bit. You'll feel a chip underneath it a lot of times too. You'll feel like a grinding. So I wipe those both down. I get them both in there. I'm going to go ahead and put side 3 up. Close up my vise a little bit until it's sitting on the parallels. Just be careful. Don't put them in there. You can actually tighten it up and it's on this big angle. Make sure it's dropped on the parallels. If you need to look from the side, you can. Just make sure it's sitting right on there. Now side 3 is an odd number, so it's just going to be a cleanup or a facing cut or a finish cut. I'm going to try to take 10 thousandths just like I did on side number 1 and hopefully it cleans up. Again, side 3, I don't need to tap down with the dead blow either. You'll notice this parallel is loose and that's okay. I don't need to tap it down until I have this reference surface resting on the parallels. Right now the only thing I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get this surface square to the two sides. And then when I flip it, I'll make side 4 parallel to side number 3. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn on the milling machine. I'm going to get this thing into position. So I need to crank it down since the part's a little bit taller now. And I'm going to get it a little bit closer. Now on this side, I can do this all in one pass because the part is thinner than the actual width of the cutter. So position it so that you don't have to do multiple passes to make your job a little bit easier. So I'm kind of eyeballing, making sure the part is right down the center of the spindle line so that the cutter width is wider than the actual part there. I'm going to crank it over the part and I'm going to touch it off just like I did on side numbers 1 and 2. So I bring it down slowly, I'm looking at it on eye level until I hear it and see it start to make contact. Okay, I just heard it right now, but it's actually hitting the burr up on side 3. So I'm going to watch it until I see it make contact with the actual part. So right there, it just made contact with the part. You can kind of see the path a little bit that it cut. And right there, you only see a little patch that's cut. So it gives you an indication that the part wasn't square to begin with. If it was square, it would cut along the entire surface right now. So I'm going to re-zero out my Z-axis the way I showed you guys before. Set my Z to 0. Tighten up this collar, make sure it doesn't move on me. And then I'm going to go to 10. So I'm going to take 10 thousandths right there. And then I'm just going to go ahead and do this pass. Kind of position my guard because now I understand a little bit. It's going to probably shoot out this direction so I can deflect the chips. And this is our finish pass, hopefully, so I'm going to keep the feed rate nice and consistent. Even when I come off of it and I'm on the back end. Alright, and that should be side 3. I take a look at it and it looks like it cleaned up the entire surface, so I don't need to take any more. So side 3 is done. I'm going to take the part out. Okay, now I have a burr on side 3. I'm going to deburr that. Make sure there's no chip. Remember, the way I check for burrs is I run my finger perpendicular to the edge and I feel a hook right now, and so I still have to deburr some more. Don't run your finger along the edge because you'll slice your finger open by doing that. Do it until it's done. Don't just do it once or twice and think that you're good. Right now I can see this burr just starting to come up. You guys can see that little guy. So I got to get that all the way off. Otherwise it's going to cause me to be inaccurate. Okay, so that side feels pretty good. One side's normally going to be worse than the other, just the way the facing cutter works. The exit of the cutter is normally has a bigger chip on it, so this side wasn't bad. Okay, so I got the bottom deburred. I'm not going to worry about deburring this side right now because I'm not going to be grabbing onto it, and that's just going to cut off later. But I'm going to put this back in the vise. Again, anytime I change the setup, I take out the parallel. I make sure that everything's clean. No chips down there. I can feel a bunch of chips. Wipe down the parallels. Back in place. Wipe down the bottom of the part. Everything clean. Get it put back on and tighten it down. Now here, since it's an odd or an even number, number 4, I am going to tap it down with the dead blow hammer, and I want those parallels to tighten up in there, and that's going to make sure that this side right here ends up being parallel to side 3. So right now you see the parallel moves back and forth, this parallel moves back and forth. I tap it down. Okay, one of them's still moving a little bit. Now that's locked in, that one's locked in. Okay, they're both locked in. Sometimes it takes a little persuading. I always like to look down too. Make sure that it's seated flat on the parallel and it's not up at an angle. You'll see a gap between the part and the angle, or the part and the parallel if it is. Now I'm ready to take the next cut. So I'm going to bring the part back over. It should be right about at level. I'm going to bring it over top. I can kind of hear it, so I'll bring it up just 1/1000th or so. Okay, that's a touch off right there. I re-zero my Z-axis. I go 10/1000ths just to give myself a surface to measure from. Don't measure off of the rough surface because it's not going to be accurate. Side number 4 is being cut away. Get a nice clean surface, and then in a minute I'll do some measurement and some math to figure out how much more I have to take off. So I'm going to turn off the machine, crank it away, so I can get a good measurement with my caliper. Now this side, according to my drawing, is supposed to be 1.750 wide. And so I'm going to see where I'm at and figure out where I need to be. So if I come over, I make sure my caliper is nice and square on here. I can see that I'm at 1.858. So I'm going to do in my calculator 1.858 minus 1.750. And that's going to give me how much I have left to take off. So I have 108 thousandths. Now in my head, I know I can take maximum 50. So I know that my first pass is going to be 50 thousandths, my second pass is going to be 50 thousandths, and that's going to be a total of 100. And that leaves me with a perfect 8 thousandths left for a finish pass. Finish pass can be anywhere from 3 to 15 thousandths. So if you have it fall in there, you're good. So I'm going to take 3 passes for this cut right now. I'm going to go ahead and bring it over here. I'm going to re-zero out my Z so I can start from 0 and then just take 108. I'm going to go to 50, which is a half a rotation. And I'm going to go ahead and take this pass. I crank it up fast to the part, but then I slow it down because it's going to be a heavier cut right now. Okay, this is a roughing pass, so I can actually speed it up at the end. I'm going to go my other 50, so that's going to be at 100, so I'm back at 0. And I'm going to go ahead and take this next pass. Okay, so that should be 100 thousandths right there. I am going to verify the measurement. Do that a couple times along the way, especially if you're taking off a couple of 100 thousandths. It's always good to measure a few times and be sure rather than overshoot it. So I just double check. I'm always cleaning my caliper too. Make sure that the jaws are clean. Double check the 0. It's still good there. So I'm going to get it down on the part, give it a good measurement. And I'm at 1.758, which makes perfect sense because I only had 8 thousandths left. Now, while I have it here, I do want to point out, I'm measuring over into the surface of the part. I'm not measuring right at the edge. because right at the edge I have this big burr right now, and you'll notice the caliper has a little step up to accommodate that. If I measure right at the burr, it shows that I'm at 1.760, which is 2 thousandths different than what I'm actually at. If I measure inside the part right there, okay, I'm at 758, which is what I expected. So I'm going to go ahead and do my 8 thousandths finish pass, and this side should be done. So I go here, I'm at 0, and I just go to 8 right there, and that's it. And I'm going to go ahead and keep my feed rate really nice and consistent for this last pass, so I have a good surface finish. It should be a nice and light cut. Keep it consistent on the exit because it's my finish pass. And that side should be done. I'm just going to verify it again. I'll check it, see how hot it is. It's not too hot, so I'll just pull the part out since I'm going to be deburring it anyway. But I'm just going to double check the measurement. Re-verify my 0. I'm always doing that. No chips on the part. Okay, and if you look right there, I made it to 1.750. I'm about a half a thousandth above. But for a tolerance of 5 thousandths, that's actually really good. Now if I flip it over and measure the other side, you'll see that it's consistent, and that's a result of us using the parallels effectively. If there was a chip in there that caused one side to sit up, you might see one end being up at 1.770 and the other side being at 1.750, which would mean you'd have a big taper going on. So you can check to see that it's parallel by measuring both sides. So I have the same measurement there as I have there. And so those sides are good.